we are being bombarded by toxins in our environment now, the foods that we eat, all the antibiotics in our foods, messing up our gut health, our microbiome. So like these are kind of new things. And I feel like people are predisposed, whether it's through genetics, or environmental factors, to certain diseases. And for me, even though I felt like the epitome of health, I ended up being a single mother, not by my choice. And I noticed looking back that I was living in survival mode.
Mm.
So my cortisol levels were skyrocketed for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like disease looks for those little weaknesses in the body, whether it's stress or poor diet or stuff like that, and it sneaks in there. And that's kind of when that's exactly when my RA triggered. Was I was living in survival mode for 4 years, and the body can only take so much.
Do you guys know how difficult it is to find a high quality supplement line that doesn't just destroy your gut? Most pre-workouts and post-workouts, or even like on-the-go snack options like beef jerky or protein bars, they're terrible for your gut health. They're full of xanthan gum and guar gums and fillers and artificial sweeteners, which disrupt your gut microbiome and lead to chronic bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and not to mention when our gut is off, all of the other symptoms like hormone imbalances, thyroid issues, mental health issues, which is why I'm just obsessed about gut health. But anywho, I have not been able to find a good supplement line out there, and I had to cut out all of these fitness type supplements when I was really struggling with a lot of my own gut issues. Until recently, I found Paleo Valley. And Paleo Valley is one of the first supplement companies that hands down is incredible for your gut health, whether you're on a gut healing journey or you're someone who just wants to optimize your gut health and overall health. Their founder, Autumn, actually suffered with IBS herself. So she created this entire supplement line specifically to be gut friendly. And I'm not lying with you guys. Their whey protein powder, which is grass-fed and finished, gum-free, artificial sweetener-free, no issues, no bloating, no constipation, no diarrhea, no upset stomach, which is literally like the first time in my entire life that I've not had issues with a protein powder. And they even have super yummy grass-fed and finished beef jerky sticks, which are made with a collagen casing instead of the typical citric acid casing, which is terrible for your gut health. And if you want to try out some of their other products, they even have a bone broth protein powder. I love adding that into whether it's like my oatmeal in the morning or my protein shakes. It literally tastes like the Nestle hot chocolate powders, if you ever had those as a kid, which were not gut friendly. And then they have great supplements too, like their apple cider vinegar capsules or even their turmeric capsules, which are great for inflammation and gut health. So if you want to get a discount, you can use my code using the link in the show notes here, which is paleovalley.com/Rachel Scheer podcast. But all of that's going to be in the show notes. So check out the supplement line because guys, you know me, I would not have this on my podcast if it was not awesome and gut friendly. Jessie, welcome to the show. I am super honored to have you on here today and to talk a little bit more about your story and everything that you're so passionate about. You know, I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. My area of expertise is gut health. And I actually became so passionate about what I do because of my own health issues of struggling with IBS and feeling like Western medicine failed me and really having to figure it out myself and to take more of a holistic approach to healing, which ended up being the best thing that could have ever happened to me because I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing now today and I wouldn't be helping so many people. But I know you have a very similar story. You have a very similar story with rheumatoid arthritis and having to really heal through that. And I also know you come from the fitness industry as well. So we'll connect a little bit about that here in a bit. But starting out, tell me a little bit about your diagnosis of RA.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And yes, it seems like our stories are very parallel, like being pioneers in this whole autoimmune disease. When I got diagnosed 15 years ago, nobody was talking about it. There was no Instagram. There was no resources like we have now. It was considered an old person's disease, and you went on steroids and biologics, and that was it. And prior to getting diagnosed, I really thought that I was the epitome of health. I was a ballerina. I became a vegetarian at age 11. I'm no longer a vegetarian, but I'm just laying the premise for like, I was always on the forefront of health and what was happening, and very mindful and tapped into holistic health. I gave birth to my son at home naturally and was a yoga teacher. And then my body just started to shut down. And it's really interesting because looking back, you can kind of like put the pieces together and like, why did this happen to me? And, you can kind of blame yourself. I've done so much research. There was like a lot of environmental impact in the way that I grew up. We just discovered 2 years ago that the water system I grew up in was toxic. And there's actually thousands of us with autoimmune disease and cancers and all kinds of crazy things. But when I first got diagnosed, it was the first time that I was like, oh gosh, I guess I am not bulletproof. I had never taken, even a Tylenol up to that point. So the first thing I did was everything my doctor said, because they believe that you have a higher chance of going into remission if you start right away with like methotrexate, biologics, which is basically like chemotherapy. And I kind of knew in the back of my head that my body was going to reject everything and I was going to get every negative side effect, which I did. I've always been a very sensitive person, hence why I never even took over-the-counter drugs. But I kind of had to go through that process to get my family and friends on board to support me going the holistic route and trying everything Eastern medicine and now what's called functional medicine. And then, it was a long journey and it's still a long journey. I say I'm thriving with RA. It's, I still have the diagnosis. I still have tough days, but it keeps me in line. And, I read somewhere that people living with autoimmune disease are the healthiest in the world because they have to be. And it's so true. I'm sure you can relate. It's like, if you have IBS, then you have a certain diet. Like there's just something that you don't get to like teeter on. But at the end of the day, it, just like you, it's been my greatest teacher and it's guided me into so many amazing avenues and being able to help people. So
yeah, I think it's very powerful for you to share your story of RA, because I think when a lot of people do think of, diseases and even autoimmune conditions, they think a lot about, you probably were someone who was pretty unhealthy. You weren't taking care of your body. And this is where it developed because it was a lifestyle disease overall. And I've worked with a lot of people with autoimmune conditions, and it can come from a triad of many different things. Now, don't get me wrong. There are definitely people who develop autoimmune conditions who don't take care of themselves, physically with the foods that they're eating, nutrition. We know genetics can play a big role too, but a lot of people also don't think about the environmental factors. And it's interesting that we're doing this podcast today, because I even did a post, I think last week on my social media, about the 3 common root causes for developing an autoimmune condition. One of them being intestinal permeability, gut imbalances, because most of our immune system is localized in the gut. The other one, genetic predisposition. So genetics do play a role. And then the other being toxins, environmental toxins. And I heard you mentioned in your story a little bit about the toxin component. And I think a lot of us don't think about how that really plays a role in our health. And I've actually worked with quite a few people where we've done testing and we've done the gut microbiome testing. We've done, everything under the sun to try to understand what's going on with their autoimmune condition. And then they come back with mold toxicity, and they have a ton of these toxins that are in their body that cause this immune upregulation. And that immune upregulation ends up over time leading to this, low grade inflammation and developing an autoimmune condition. And genetics definitely, of course, play a role in combination with a lot of those things for sure. But kind of coming back to what I was saying here at the beginning, it's powerful for you to share your story because you come from, like you said, someone who was probably looked at as the epitome of health, or what you thought was the epitome of health. And then here you are developing an autoimmune condition. And I can imagine how shocking that must be, because I felt the same way when I started to get all of my gut issues, and I was a fitness model and bikini competitor, and being told I needed to have my large intestine removed. And it's a really scary thing for sure. And the medication route, there's definitely a lot of side effects that can come with that for sure. But I guess the question I have for you on your healing journey of getting the diagnosis of RA is kind of that steps to healing, because you shared you're at this place now where you're thriving. Of course it's not gone, you still have the RA, but you're in a place where you're thriving. I mean, I got your book here. Got your book. I mean, these are beautiful, beautiful photos that I have in here. And you're teaching people about how to live an optimal life, optimal health. You're doing so many things. So I think it's very, very, empowering for people to hear of how you went through that journey. So where did you start?
Yeah. I just want to mention something. When you were talking, there's two things that came to mind, just talking about environmental factors and even gut health. I feel like a lot of people think it's still woo-wah, wee-wah, or new information. And I think that's because it kind of is. We didn't really have to worry about stuff like this 50, 60 years ago. We are being bombarded by toxins in our environment now, the foods that we eat, all the antibiotics in our foods, messing up our gut health, our microbiome. So these are kind of new things. And I feel like people are predisposed, whether it's through genetics, or environmental factors, to certain diseases. And for me, even though I felt like the epitome of health, I ended up being a single mother, not by my choice. And I noticed looking back that I was living in survival mode. So my cortisol levels were skyrocketed for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like disease looks for those little weaknesses in the body, whether it's stress or poor diet or stuff like that, and it sneaks in there. And that's kind of when that's exactly when my RA triggered. Was I was living in survival mode for 4 years, and the body can only take so much. And being a single mom, I was trying to do everything, which a lot of women I know feel, trying to do everything. And I was ignoring all those body signals, and my body just eventually shut down until I had no choice but to listen. But to get to your question, what did I do? It's I've kind of acquired a toolbox of tricks and things, and still learning my body. And I think the greatest thing that I could share with anybody that's going through any kind of healing journey is what worked for you yesterday might not work for you today. We are ever evolving species. And even if you change environments, your body might shift, with the foods that you eat or the relationships that you're in. All those things affect your health. And at least for me. And I try to always be open and listen to my body's biofeedback and make changes as needed. Because I've noticed, I've tried every diet in the book. I've done it all at this point. And I like to listen to my intuition. I call myself an intuitive eater. And I just really vibe things out. And that's the positive and negative. When you're living with an autoimmune disease, you become a very sensitive barometer for everything, for energy, for food, for all that stuff. But as long as you listen to that, it'll guide you. It'll let you know.
Do you feel like that is something you've always had or something you more so developed with your autoimmune condition? Because I know, like, I feel like I now know what good feels like because now I'm living in good, but I also know what really bad feels like because of all my gut issues and depression and everything that I walked through. So I have this like the high and I have the low. So I know when I'm up here, which is where I try to maintain, but right, we're human and we can't always be perfect all the time up here. But I'm able to really pay attention to the little cues in my body because of that. So I'm curious if that was something you feel like you always had of just like being very intuitive with your body and knowing the cues of when it's off, or something that more so developed after or during your autoimmune condition.
No, I think I was always really in tune. I grew up as a ballerina and then I transitioned into yoga. So like being in tune with my body was always something that I practiced with. And then becoming a mother and deciding to give birth at home, like these are all things that really like force you to like tune into your body. But after I became a single mom, I ignored everybody's signal.
Mm.
And I think, I always track that back to my ballet background too. And I think a lot of strong women just do this. But my ballet background, we were taught, and anybody in fitness or any kind of being an athlete, you're really taught to ignore everybody's signal. You're just taught to push through and just make it look good. And we don't care if your leg hurts or if your foot hurts or if your stomach hurts, like just shut up and dance. Like that was literally my entire childhood. So not until I fell in love with yoga when I was 18, I remember the first time I went to a class and the teacher was like, if you feel tired, you can come to child's pose. And I was like, what? Like, we're supposed to listen to what our body needs? Like, I just thought that was so bizarre. And that was the first time where that seed was planted for listening to my body and giving myself what it actually needs versus just trying to push through and like hoping I would get to the other side. Because that strong mentality doesn't necessarily work with chronic disease.
No, definitely not. I don't think it works for us in general, and we try to outsmart our bodies, right?
Yeah.
I think, those are the days where like, yes, sometimes we do like kind of push through, but I think there's like a way to do that, like with grace. But women and men too, but women definitely, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves of like pull it together, and we can tell ourselves we're fine, but eventually like our body's like, no, no, we're not. We're not fine. And that's where we get to this point with our health and we're like, what is really happening here? And I know you mentioned the stress piece quite a bit, like, yes, environmental, which I do want to kind of come back full circle to that, because I know a lot of everything that you talk about is really, low toxin living, and then a lot of the beauty products and everything that you do. And I think that's so cool. That's so amazing. But the stress piece is huge for a lot of people. And it makes sense to me too, with chronic stress, as to where that would develop into an autoimmune condition, more from a physiological standpoint in the body. Because when we're in that constant state of fight or flight, right, our digestive system shuts down and our cortisol is chronically elevated. Cortisol, for everybody listening, is very catabolic. So it breaks things down. Bodybuilders and coming from that world, like we want to avoid cortisol like the hawk because we don't want to lose our muscle at all. But we don't think about how our gut lining is actually a muscle tissue, right? So our gut lining being one cell layer thick, when we're chronically stressed, becomes broken down. And we actually develop something called intestinal permeability. And this actually is partially the breeding ground for the development of autoimmune conditions, combined with toxins that are wreaking havoc on our gut. Maybe there's food that we're eating that's not very gut friendly that also is leading to, gut imbalances. But with the stress, like that's that piece that a lot of us don't take very seriously, because it's just kind of like this, whew, stress. What is that? What is that? Right. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, even your healing journey with that, because I would imagine you've had to make a lot of shifts. And I know sometimes there's like, okay, immediately I need to make some changes, but also like big picture, I'm a single mama. I got a lot of pressure on me. So sometimes even for people who are listening, there's like things that we just have to like learn stress management while we're going through stressful periods in our life.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I mean, I think motherhood taught me this, and then being diagnosed with a chronic disease, it became even more apparent, but like setting boundaries, being okay with saying no to people, and just putting myself first, because I was, I was not feeling great, and my son was relying on me. So it was like super important for me to like take care of myself. And I didn't have a lot else to give after taking care of him and myself. So setting boundaries, and I was a yoga teacher already at that point, and yoga has saved my life over and over and over. And just having that consistent practice on the mat, and walking as well, especially for those new mamas that have a baby. My yoga teacher said, if you ever feel stressed, or if you ever have a problem, go for a walk and don't come back until you have a resolve. And I would just go on these crazy long walks with my son, but it was just so healing. It was like a meditative walk. But just taking those little moments, for myself before things got too bad, because things got really bad. And then I was like, okay, this isn't working. Like, I need to take care of myself. And then I started kind of setting all these boundaries and starting these self-care practices.
Yeah. And in those self-care practices, it sounds also like too, like your relationship with yourself was also something that was very, very important. I know it's hard for a lot of women, to want to take time out for themselves, to like literally spend time alone, right? Like we're addicted to our cell phones, we're addicted to distracting. And I think even too, it's common for a lot of people who even do maybe find that space or that little buffer during the day. We fill it up, right? We fill it up with stuff because it's so hard to just like sit with ourselves. So one of the things I heard from what you said is like you spent time with yourself. It wasn't just like self-care, like I'm going to go do just bubble baths, which that could be definitely part of it. But it was like I'm spending time with myself. And I think that's also really healing in of itself, and something that maybe other people wouldn't take notice of. But it wasn't just like physical self-care, like yes, yoga, but it was time with yourself. Does that sound like it's
and I think like what you're saying, what I've noticed that I've always done too, that has really helped me, is like I listen to podcasts all the time, and I read books, and I love meditations and all that stuff. But when I'm practicing yoga, like on my own, I'm in my own zone, and I'm in with my own thoughts. And when I go for walks, I don't listen to anything. I like that opportunity to check in with myself, because I do feel like we are so bombarded, especially now, with so much information, and we really don't get that opportunity to listen to what our body is trying to tell us, because we're constantly listening to everything else outside.
Yeah. And I think when we really get quiet, and I know this is true for myself, like when we really get quiet and we like tune in and we listen and we find that space with ourselves, like we know when it's like, girl, we need to slow down. Like we need to slow down a little bit, or hey, like things aren't right, physically in our body. Like our nervous system is incredible. And I think that's like really the best gauge of our health overall. I always say optimal health. We can look at it from 3 categories to really check in with ourselves. First is digestion, of course, gut health. So is your digestion good? If your digestion is not good, if you're constipated, if you're running to the bathroom all the time, like that's a sign. And that actually can be a nervous system issue if your digestion is off, or a dietary issue. Number 2 is your energy levels. If you're constantly fatigued throughout the day, if you have brain fog, that's a sign that something is off. And then number 3 is going to be your anxiety levels, or you kind of going back to the nervous system too. So I think too, when we like can get quiet, we can really like tune into a lot of those things, like digestion. Yes, we can go to the bathroom and see like what that looks like, but our nervous system, like our energy levels, like what is that like? And I know for a lot of people, and myself too, when I've given myself that space, like sometimes like tears come up, sometimes like emotion comes up, because it's like, oh, this is what's really beneath the surface of what I'm just like pushing through so much right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I got diagnosed with RA, it came on really, really quick. And I actually didn't walk like for almost a year of my life. I was bedridden. And it was so challenging for me because it was the first time in my life that I wasn't able to transmute energy and deal with everything in my life through body movement. Whether I was dancing my whole life, or I was practicing yoga, I was like constantly using my body. And now I was forced to listen to what was actually going on. And that was one of the most transforming things. I could focus on the negative and be like, oh my God, it was awful. Of course it was awful, but like the blessing in it is I learned so many amazing lessons through that process that I wouldn't have learned had I just gone to my old ways and like relied on my body like I always had. Which yogis have been doing forever, like with Vipassana and just like having to meditate and be still with themselves for days on end.
So many of you guys know my story of losing my health, dealing with hormonal imbalances, thyroid issues, depression, anxiety, and gut issues that were so severe. I almost had my entire large intestine removed, and Western medicine completely failed me. They gave me trash can diagnosis like IBS, depression, gave me a bunch of medications. And, if I wouldn't have taken my health in my own hands today, I would be without an entire organ, like literally. And that's why I created what I wish I had, what I needed, a holistic mind and body approach, a functional medicine approach that said, why do we have this problem in the first place? And what can we do to restore function? This is the difference between thriving instead of just surviving and managing your symptoms. So if you're somebody who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, dealing with stubborn gut issues or hormonal imbalances or weight loss that you feel like is not moving anywhere, or thyroid issues and autoimmune condition, there is hope. There is another approach. And me and my team of registered dietitians, we want to help you. We want to be the support there for you. We want to do the functional medicine lab testing, look at your gut, your hormones, your thyroid, your adrenals, deficiencies, toxins that you can have in your body, get to know what you're doing with your nutrition, look at your lifestyle, look at your previous medical history, and help you create a customized plan to not just only heal, but get to the best health of your entire life. So if you're somebody who's ready to take a root cause approach to healing and step into the best version of you, fill out our application on our website, rachelscheer.com, and book a free 30-minute call. Absolutely free to do this call. Our goal on this call is to better get to know your goals and how this approach may work for you. So click the link in the show notes and book a free call if you would like to learn more. Yeah, I think your story is a good reminder for us all to like slow down and tune in with our bodies. Because I think we all have that ability. We just lose sight of it after a while with the busyness. And that's what I love so much about yoga practice. And as I'm doing this podcast, I'm like, okay, I need to get back in yoga because I'm just like, I'm the weight girl. I'm like, gotta go lift my weights, do all the weights. And it's very like the plainer motions of everything that I do. But combining yoga and I love meditation too, along with it, but creating that space to really connect with yourself overall. So throughout your healing journey, tell me a little bit about how this led to your business, because not only have you gone through this healing journey and you're empowering so many women to take control of their health, but you're also a badass CEO. You wrote this book that I got here about, golden secrets to optimal health. You have a beauty line. So I'd love to hear about how you went from there all the way to this awesome business that you have now.
Yeah. So I never had intentions on being a skincare owner. That was like not in the plan. But I've been creating my own products. The first product I created, I was 15. And it's kind of like synonymous with who I am. All my friends, everybody knows about it. Everybody would always say, what's your golden secret? They would kind of ask me. So they kind of gave me the name. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to call it the Golden Secrets. But I started with a blog called the Golden Secrets, where right after I was diagnosed, I was getting bombarded with a lot of people messaging me on MySpace at the time. This was so long ago. Asking me like how I was able to continue thriving. They knew I hadn't walked. I was still modeling at the time, and a lot of yoga companies that were just coming to birth gave me a platform to share my story. And a lot of people started reaching out being like, what did you eat? Like, what did you do? Like, again, it sounds so crazy, but back then nobody was talking about this. Like, nobody was talking about nightshade vegetables. Nobody was talking about inflammation. Nobody was talking about gut health. Like, probiotics weren't even a thing. You know what I mean? It was like, so, I was really lucky, I think, because I was in California and I had a lot of access to these new types of ways of living with macrobiotic doctors and going to Erewhon and meeting with new practitioners and Ayurvedic practitioners, homeopathic. I mean, I met with everybody and I kind of gathered these resources that helped me. And I started sharing on this blog called The Golden Secrets, everything and anything that had helped me thrive. And I was just doing this as a passion project. I mean, I was a single mom. I was trying to heal myself, which is a full-time job. And I was still making a living as a modeling, but it was a struggle. I was struggling like in all aspects, financially, stress-wise, like everything. And my friend said, why don't you start modeling that stuff that everybody is always asking you about? Every time I'm with you, people are like, what's your golden secret? What are you wearing? What's that scent? And I was like, oh, I got like I thought it was like the dumbest idea. And then I got really protective over it because I was like, these are my like sacred potions. I don't want to share them. And then I realized kind of what we were talking about a couple minutes ago. It's like these products were natural and organic and clean. And, I was in the modeling industry at the time and nobody was using that stuff except for hippies at Wild Oats stores or something. It was not a thing. But I was using all these natural products and I noticed that they became part of my self-care rituals. Like they became the tools for me to like just check in with myself and tap in, especially this essential oil blend that I always have on hand. And I said, all right, maybe I should do this. So I just started packaging the first product and everybody just loved it. I think everyone was craving. It was just the beginning. This light is like crazy right now. It's
the golden light for the golden secrets.
It was just the beginning of like people starting to talk about clean beauty and the dangers of fragrances. So I think I just came out at the right time. And now I own an entire skincare line. And it's really interesting because I had never anticipated on doing that. So I think that's why it's so important for me to have it be more than just clean, beautiful skincare. So I'm always teaching people about going beyond the skin and taking the moment to like tap in with yourself. Every product comes with affirmations for you to recite. I'm a big believer in positive affirmations and being able to rewire the brain. And then of course we do so many amazing things. We plant a tree for every order. We give back to regenerative farming, which is so important. I believe that the soil health mimics our own gut health. So I really think that it's all tied in. And I just love being able to help people, especially women, feel comfortable in their skin and know that nature is enough. I love breaking the cycle. I get so many customers that come to me and they'll be like, I've gone from, dermatologist to dermatologist and they had me on steroids and this and eczema and all these and synthetic retinoids that are toxic. And then they try one of my organic oils and like all their acne goes away. And it just makes me feel so good.
Yeah. I know you said earlier about like coming out at the right time. I will contradict that a little bit because I will say your story played a massive role And I believe all of this. So I do a lot of business coaching. And one of the things that I speak to quite a bit is, we can't just come out with something like a product, it's really the story and the person behind it and the mission that really sells the product. And yes, you have like incredible beauty products and everything that you've talked about, where it's very holistic and toxin free and no chemicals, and it's beautiful, like with the affirmations and everything that you're doing. But I see you behind it, and I see your story behind it. And I think for anybody who's listening and they're like, well, just come out with a product and do these things, like it's the story that really matters ultimately at the end of the day, right? You have this story of, being a model, being in the health and the wellness industry, developing, an autoimmune condition, having to heal through that, and then living a toxin free and this, chemical free holistic lifestyle. This was a beautiful example for other people. And they're like, what are you doing? I want to know what she's doing, because not only is she physically beautiful, but she is also like beautiful in what she's doing. And now she's coming out with something, taking what she's walked through to now serve other people. And I think out of the best entrepreneurs I see out there, they're doing just that. They have taken some kind of a pain, something they've walked through. I know you said it was like a little bit of like a passion project, kind of like a side thing, but it sounds like it came from like everything of like you really wanting to take a different approach to your health and be your own advocate. And that's something that I talk about so much for the women that I work with, is like, we got to be our own health advocate. We have to be our advocate, because nobody else is going to be for us. Absolutely. Like nobody is going to be. And if I wasn't my own advocate, one, I wouldn't have the business that I have now today. But more importantly, I would be without my large intestine. I could be on every medication under the sun. I had to be my own advocate for healing. And I think that's really what you were. You're like, I'm my own advocate. There's not anything out there for this. So you know what? I'm going to make it. And I think that's really how like true entrepreneurs think. They're like, this doesn't exist. I need this. And we like make it for ourselves. I think that's what's so cool about your story.
Thank you. I always feel really lucky when people are like, well, what's the difference between you and everybody else? And I'm like, well, the product came first. I think like, a lot of companies now, it's like, especially with the world that we live in with creators and influencers, it's like people are just starting companies, white labeling things and putting a stamp on it. And they've never actually used the products. They certainly haven't used them for years. And, it's all marketing. And, all my entire story just kind of transpired organically. And I just followed where I was led. And the basis of everything has always been just to share things that have helped me in my life.
Yeah. I can relate to that too. And I think that's why you're so successful, because it hasn't been about, hey, I just want to start a business. What should I start a business of? Maybe I'll come out with a skincare line, maybe I'll come out with a product or supplements. It was like, hey, I had a massive need for this for myself. So I made this for myself. And then other people were like, what are you doing? I want to follow this person. I want to learn from this person because what she represents. And I think that's where like successful businesses are truly born. Like there's the need along the way, first coming from yourself overall. So very, very powerful story. I'd love to learn a little bit more too about all of your, not probably all of the different products because we don't have time, but what would you say is like one of your favorites?
Well, our best seller is the Youth Beauty Face Oil, which is 10 organic plant botanicals that rapidly adapt to your face. And it has organic rosehip in it, which is different than rosehip seed oil. It's the whole fruit. It contains 10 times more provitamin A than rosehip seed, which is very similar to tretinoin. So you get the same smoothing benefits as like a chemical retinoid, but it's natural, non-toxic. I always tell people this is like one of the things. It's like dermatologists just recommend, synthetic retinoids all the time. Like it's no big deal. The EWG Environmental Working Group rates synthetic retinoids as a 9 out of 10 for toxicity, for cancer and reproductive harm. and women are putting this on their skin every day, and it just blows my mind. But I would definitely say that the Youth Beauty Face Oil, we also just won Think Dirty's Best Face Oil Award, which is such a big deal because we are still a very small company. And I mean, every product is so unique in its own way, but I am also all about less is more. I don't think we need like 10,000 products to look beautiful. I'm all about like getting as much as you can into one product. So with the Youth Beauty, it also is loaded with vitamin C. We have like a Helo oil that could be used in a multitude of ways to cleanse the skin. You can use it as a moisturizer, all over body glow, a hair oil. And I think that's what's so beautiful is when you're using natural products, you can do that. You know, you can use it for a variety of reasons. But every product is so amazing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You guys will have to go check out her website, which we'll be talking about here at the end. You mentioned Think Dirty. So talking about toxic products that we use on our skin, I've actually told a lot of my clients about that Think Dirty, where you can actually go through a lot of beauty products, the top like toxic products, and they kind of give them the scale and the rating. And then they list the ones that are pretty clean. In your opinion, what would you say are some of the biggest ingredients for women to look out for with beauty products that they're using?
Fragrance is number one, because there's no law. There's like forgot what it's called, like a trade secret law where they don't actually have to list the chemicals or the toxins. So it can include over 1,500 different chemicals and toxins, which just blows my mind. So I personally don't use anything with fragrance. And now that you'll notice that everything says fragrance. So you have to be very mindful. I mean, they sneak it into everything from our shampoo to our candles to our garbage liners. It's everywhere. So I would definitely say fragrance. And then there's a bunch of like parabens and phthalates. You want to be aware of those types of toxins. You know, natural preservatives, organic when possible. But I would definitely say fragrance is like a big one, because they're calling it the new secondhand smoke. And I hope that when I explain this to people, they do it for other people. But when you're wearing a toxic fragrant perfume, for example, you're not only affecting yourself, you're affecting everybody that smells you. That's why they're calling it the new secondhand smoke. So it's not just about you. It's about your kids, your family, everybody. And there's so many beautiful natural perfumes now. I mean, like we make an organic essential oil perfume that's no synthetic fragrances. It's 100% natural. And it's so beautiful, you know, and I really think that that's how we were meant to wear Mother Nature.
Yeah, I think that's what it is wearing Mother Nature. And every time we try to mess with it, like it always comes back and bites us in the butt in some way, you know, whether it's medications or anything, which is why I'm so passionate about getting to the root cause of them using food as medicine, lifestyle therapies, and paying attention to what causes dysregulation overall in the body. And toxins is like one of those areas that I feel like once you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, I knew nothing about this. Like, this is brand new. Like for me, it wasn't until like even after a little bit in my gut healing that I started to learn a lot about toxins. And my functional wellness practice, we do a full toxin panel. So we'll look at, you know, skin toxins, we'll look at mold, we'll do heavy metals. And I ran one of those on myself. I'm not sure if you've ever ran a toxin panel, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's not if you have toxins, it's how much. It's how much do you have in your body? And I was like, I like immediately started to do like different kind of detox protocols. And like, I can't tell you how much things I threw out because I had like BPAs and I had used all my like plastic meal prep Tupperware from like my fitness days, you know, my lotions. Glyphosate was huge for me. That came back, which is like so commonly used in like fruits and vegetables and all of these things. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. Like we can't avoid it. And that's true. Like we do live in a toxic world and we can't avoid it. And I think it's really about like what you're doing, empowering people to like pay attention to what they're using and support their body. Because if you're supporting your body with nutrition and you're supporting your hormones, you're supporting your gut health, that is going to help your body naturally detox better. And a lot of people actually struggle to detox through their liver and through their gut, which your gut is the last area that we detox from, because they're not taking care of their physical body, and not just from like a toxic standpoint, but stress, the foods that they're eating, like all of these things play a role in our overall health. And I know one of the things, Jessie, that you talk about in your new book is optimal health. Is optimal health instead of just health, right? So what is the difference between like optimal health? I feel like I know the answer, but I want everyone else to hear your answer.
I'm like, I don't know if I know the answer. I think just optimizing, who you are and how healthy you can be. And I think you tapped on this earlier, especially people living with chronic disease. It's like, you don't know how good you could feel until you're there. Because some of us are in so much pain all the time. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe how shitty I felt all those years, but, I always say that the sicker you are, the cleaner you need to be. So I wrote the book because I wanted to make it digestible for people to be healthy and not bombard people with like, you have to throw all your skincare out. You have to throw out everything in your kitchen. You have to do this, you have to do that. It's like,
just what I did. I did that though.
Eventually, but like one thing at a time. Like, we all know by now our skin is our largest organ. So if you're putting like a toxic, fragrant, phthalate filled, product on your entire body every day, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And eating that organic food isn't really going to do anything. So, it's just like, what are you doing every single day that could be affecting your health? And then like optimizing those things that you're doing, your environment, your diet, what you're putting on your skin, your relationships, the stress levels, like managing the stress levels. And this day and age, it's different. Like we are bombarded by toxins. Glyphosate is everywhere. That's new. That's in the last 50 years. That's our grandparents did not have to deal with that. And just the lifestyle of the social media, I think creates a lot of like anxiety and, we're just living in a really crazy time where I think we need to be proactive with how we're taking care of ourselves and almost create a reserve of all the good minerals and the good bacteria and, doing all the things that we can do, because shit is going to happen. We are going to be in toxic environments and we are going to be in stressful times. And I think doing what we can to have like a little reserve of everything is going to benefit us.
Do you ever wish you lived like 100 years ago, like 200?
I did. When I was younger, I was obsessed with the 50s. My first car, I bought a 1953 Chevy. I was like obsessed with like back in the day. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I think about like our grandparents, and they didn't have to like shop organic because everything was organic. They didn't have to deal with like the pesticides and stuff. And they were shopping at local farms and the milk guy was bringing the fresh milk. And, it was just a different lifestyle. Bread had 2 ingredients, it wasn't loaded with gluten, and it was just a different world. So, I think we're adapting, like as we evolve as humans. I think we're adapting with technology and our environments, but some of us like me who are more sensitive are just having a little bit of a harder time.
Well, that's why we need you, because people like you come out with all of these awesome products and get to help people who, are really, really struggling ultimately. And I definitely will say like there's some like nostalgia. We like think about like the good old days of like, even though we didn't live in the good old days, right? But like the good old days of where like, it was like we go and we tend our animals on the farm and we pick our food, and then the men are big and strong and masculine. And, it's like the good old days. And it's like, we live in an awesome time. Like, don't get me wrong. We do. Like, there's so many opportunities.
We're going back to that time.
Yeah.
Right now. the pendulum has swung far enough that I really feel like a lot of people, at least a lot of people that I know, are craving land and homesteading and farming and growing their own food and just being more self-reliant, and just like having that connection to their food and knowing where it came from. And I think a lot of people are really craving that right now.
That was literally what I was about to say is I think there is like the craving there to go back to that. And it's a good thing. It's like when we go so far one direction and think about this, like with your health, think about this in anything, we're like, whoo, I'll go over here. Like our body wants to bring us back here. It's like we're even like burnout too, if you think about it, like that is our body doing what it's supposed to do. It's saying like, I'm going to make you tired. I'm going to make you fatigued because I need you to slow down. Like, I need you to slow down. I need you to rest. I need you to, and we're just like, no, no, I'm not ready to. No, I'm not going to slow down. And then we like resist what our body's saying. And then we get all of our health issues. So I think that's what's so cool. Like society as a whole, like our body, like we're always constantly like wanting to come back to what we know is true and what is homeostasis. And I think that's like what, going back to like the nature piece, like that's nature's doing. Like I believe that's God too, like bringing us back to our core of what we know. And even sometimes we haven't like we haven't experienced it. Like we talk about like the good old days, but like we know what that is. And like we want to have more of that in our life. We want to have the relationships. We want to feel good. We want to have energy. Like so many people, like you said, are anxious like because of technology. They're burnt out, like they are so fatigued. And that's where I think there's a massive craving, and it's having conversations like this and taking the lead overall, and also giving people the okay too, because I think there's so much of like the hustle culture, and I've been in that myself for sure too.
Yeah, I mean, until I got sick, did I feel like I even deserved a nap ever in my life? Like napping was not like allowed in my house. It was like you were a loser if you napped. So, I don't know if there's like a lot of people like that, but not until I was completely bedridden and people saw how sick I was did I allow myself that time to like really take care of myself and rest.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We need it for sure. Well, Jessie, this has been an awesome podcast. I could talk with you for a whole lot longer for sure with both of our line of work, but I want to be respectful of your time. Last question I have, is there anything that you'd want to leave the audience with that you feel like we didn't get to talk about that is really what your brand is all about?
Oh, my brand. I mean,
you are your brand.
yeah, let me think. What do I want to leave people with?
It's always the hardest question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the common thread, like in everything that I share, whether it's my blog or my book or my skincare, everything comes back to self-love. And I'm constantly practicing self-love. It's like a never-ending practice, but I truly believe that self-love is the foundation for everything in your life. The person that you call in, the life you create, your health, everything. And it's called self-love. The word self is in there because you actually need to do it. Like no amount of love from somebody else is going to fill that void. So it's really your job, and it's never ending. And I love sharing tools and products that help you do that throughout your day.
Yeah, I think that's the journey that we're always continuously growing in and healing through ultimately, and the greatest journey that we get to be on, because as we heal ourselves, we love ourselves more, we get to love other people and help heal everybody else too in the process. So
yeah,
where can people find you, follow you on social media, get your book, and check out all of your skincare products?
At Jessie Golden on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. And then also at The Golden Secrets, and then thegoldenSecrets.com and jessiegolden.com is where I share everything outside the Golden Secrets.
Amazing. And you guys, we'll have all of those links in the show notes if you want to check that out. And if you guys got a ton of value out of today's episode, do me a favor, take a screenshot and tag Jessie, tag me on Instagram. We love seeing everything that you're getting out of today's episode. And we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Scheer Madness. Jessie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.